January 26, 1944, Holtzwihr, France. Dawn came late to the frozen fields of Alsace. A weak winter light crept over the snow, revealing shattered trees, burned-out farmhouses, and a thin American line that looked far too small to stop what was coming. Second Lieutenant Audie Murphy stood near the edge of a forest, collar pulled tight against the cold, breath fogging the air. He was 20 years old. He weighed barely 110 pounds, and in the eyes of many men who passed him that morning, he looked more like a boy out hunting deer than an officer about to face a German counterattack. Murphy gripped his rifle with bare hands, stiff from the cold. The men of his company, what was left of them, waited behind him, exhausted from weeks of retreat and counter-retreat across eastern France. Rumors moved faster than orders. German armor was nearby. Infantry, too. Veterans whispered that this sector was about to be hit hard. Across Europe, the war had entered its brutal final phase. Hitler's armies were bleeding, but they were far from finished. The Battle of the Bulge had only recently burned itself out, and now German commanders were throwing everything they had left into desperate counterstrokes along the Western Front. Alsace was one of them. If this line broke, the road behind it lay open. Murphy had already been wounded twice in the past weeks. He should not have been here at all. But command had thinned the ranks to the bone, and experience mattered more than paperwork. So he stayed. A tank destroyer sat nearby, its crew tense and silent. Murphy glanced at it, then back to the tree line ahead. Somewhere out there, unseen in the mist, German soldiers were forming up. Men with orders. Men with weapons. Men who believed this thin American defense would fold within minutes. Someone behind Murphy muttered a half-joke about his rifle, how it looked better suited for hunting. Back home than fighting the Wehrmacht. Murphy didn't answer. He was listening now. Not to voices, but to the silence that comes just before violence breaks loose. At 8 a.m., the forest erupted. German artillery slammed into the American position, tearing up snow and earth. Machine gun fire followed, precise and relentless. Infantry poured forward in gray-green waves. The tank destroyer beside Murphy shuddered as it was hit, flames licking from its engine compartment. An order came down the line, fall back. Murphy turned once, looked at his men, then back at the advancing Germans. He did not retreat. He stepped forward into the open, alone, as the first German soldiers closed in. January 26, 1944, Holtzwihr, France. Minutes later, the order to withdraw rippled down the American line, and one by one, Murphy's men began to pull back toward the trees behind them. They hesitated, glancing over their shoulders. Their lieutenant hadn't moved. Audie Murphy stood alone in the open field, snow crunching beneath his boots, the burning tank destroyer roaring beside him like a funeral pyre. He waved his men back harder now, shouting through the chaos for them to keep going. Someone screamed for him to come with them. Murphy didn't. He knew what retreat meant here. If the Germans broke through this field, there would be nothing left to stop them for miles. The tank destroyer's crew had already bailed out. Flames climbed higher, black smoke curling into the gray sky. The vehicle was a wreck, its main gun useless. But mounted on top was a .50 caliber machine gun, still intact. Murphy climbed onto the burning hull. The heat was immediate and savage. Flames licked at his boots, singeing his trousers. The metal beneath him burned through his soles. He ignored it. He swung the heavy machine gun toward the advancing Germans and pulled the trigger. The sound was deafening. The .50 caliber barked and bucked, spitting fire and steel across the snow. German soldiers dropped in mid-stride. Others threw themselves flat, scrambling for cover that didn't exist in the open field. Murphy fired in long, controlled bursts, walking the gun across the enemy formation. He called in artillery strikes on his field radio between bursts, calmly correcting the coordinates as shells crashed down among the attackers. His voice, recorded later by stunned radio operators, never rose. It was steady, professional, almost detached. German officers tried to rally their men. Some charged forward. Others fell back, dragging wounded comrades through the snow. Mortar rounds slammed into the ground around Murphy, showering him with dirt and shrapnel. One fragment tore into his leg. Another grazed his hip. He kept firing. For nearly an hour, Murphy held the field alone, rifle slung uselessly now, hands locked onto the machine gun, eyes scanning through smoke and falling snow. The Germans could not understand what they were seeing. One American, one gun, and a wall of fire they could not cross. When the machine gun finally ran dry, Murphy jumped down from the burning wreck. His uniform was scorched. His hands were blistered. Blood soaked his pants. Then impossibly he advanced. Raising his rifle, Murphy moved toward the stunned survivors, firing with deadly precision as his own men, seeing him, still standing, turned back and surged forward behind him. The German attack collapsed. By the time the smoke cleared, dozens of enemy soldiers lay dead across the field. 42 by confirmed count, killed in a single day by a man they never saw coming. Audie Murphy collapsed only after it was over. The war would move on without pause, but this frozen field in France would never forget what happened here. January 27, 1945, a field hospital near Colmar, France. Audie Murphy woke to the smell of antiseptic and smoke that still clung to his uniform. His boots had been cut away. Bandages wrapped his legs, his hip, his burned hands. A medic leaned over him and shook his head slowly, as if seeing Murphy awake was some kind of mistake. Murphy tried to sit up. Pain slammed into him, sharp and absolute. The medic pushed him back down and told him to stay still. Word had already spread through the regiment. Men who had fallen back the day before came by quietly, standing at the edge of the tent, staring at him as if he were someone else now. Someone larger. Someone unreal. Outside, the war did not slow. Artillery still rolled across Alsace, and German units continued to probe American lines. But the counterattack at Holzwihr was finished. The breakthrough Hitler's commanders had hoped for had died in the snow, stopped by a burning vehicle and one determined officer who refused to move. Murphy was ordered evacuated. He refused. Doctors argued. Officers argued louder. Murphy listened, then simply said he was returning to his unit. He had lost too many men already. He would not leave the rest to fight without him. Against medical advice, he limped back to the front with his leg still bleeding beneath the bandages. Only later did the paperwork catch up with what had happened. The after-action reports read like exaggeration. Enemy infantry company repelled. Armor halted, field held against overwhelming force. Witness statements stacked up. Radio logs confirmed it. Artillery officers confirmed it. The men who had watched him climb onto that burning tank destroyer swore there was no other explanation. Command realized something unsettling. The story sounded unbelievable because it almost was. Weeks passed. The Allies pushed deeper into Germany. Town after town fell. Camps were liberated. The end of the war came into view, though the cost kept rising. Murphy fought on, quieter now, thinner, carrying wounds that never fully healed. Then, in May 1945, Germany surrendered. Not long after, Murphy was summoned by senior command. He stood at attention, still looking more like a farm boy than a legend, as the citation was read aloud. The words were formal, restrained, and utterly insufficient. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity above and beyond the call of duty, Audie Murphy was awarded the Medal of Honor, the highest military decoration the United States could give. At 21 years old, he became the most decorated American soldier of the Second World War. The rifle, once dismissed as a hunting tool, now sat behind glass. The field at Holzwihr returned to silence. But the war Audie Murphy carried inside him was just beginning, and it would follow him long after the gunfire stopped. Late 1945, San Antonio, Texas. The war ended quietly for Audie Murphy. There were no parades waiting at the train station, no crowds chanting his name. He stepped off the train wearing a uniform heavy with ribbons, metals clinking softly with each movement, and felt more exposed than he ever had on a battlefield. America wanted heroes again. Newspapers printed his photograph. Headlines called him a giant, a one-man army, a legend. Hollywood came calling almost immediately. Producers saw the face, the medals, the story that sounded too dramatic to be real. They offered him contracts, scripts, promises of fame. Murphy accepted, not because he wanted to be seen, but because he didn't know what else to do. At night, the war came back. Sleep was short and violent. He woke choking, reaching for weapons that weren't there, the smell of burning metal flooding his senses. The field at Holzwihr replayed itself again, and again German silhouettes advancing, through smoke. The roar of the machine gun, the heat beneath his boots. Doctors didn't have a name for it yet. They called it nerves, exhaustion, weakness. Murphy called it hell. He carried a pistol under his pillow, not for enemies, but because it was the only way he felt safe enough to sleep. He drank too much. He drifted between film sets and empty hotel rooms, smiling for cameras while fighting battles no one else could see. In 1955, Hollywood did something unprecedented. Audie Murphy was asked to play himself into Hell and Back, a film based on his own wartime experiences. Cameras recreated the snow-covered fields of France. Explosions thundered. Actors dressed in German uniforms charged toward him again. Murphy did not flinch on set. He delivered his lines calmly. But crew members noticed how he grew distant during certain scenes, how he stared too long at burning wreckage, how he went silent after filming combat sequences. He later admitted the truth. Reliving the war on screen was harder than surviving it in real life. The film became the highest-grossing war movie of its time. Audiences cheered. Critics praised the authenticity. Few understood the price being paid just off camera. The rifle that once stopped an army had saved a nation's line, but it had not saved the man who carried it. Audie Murphy had survived the war, but peace was proving far more dangerous. May 28, 1971, Roanoke, Virginia. Before dawn, low clouds clung to the mountains as the small private plane cut through the darkness. Visibility was poor. The pilot trusted his instruments, unaware that the ridgeline ahead was closer than it appeared. Inside the cabin, Audie Murphy sat quietly, hands folded, lost in thought. He was 45 years old. The war had been over for more than a quarter century, yet it had never truly ended for him. Murphy had spent years fighting for veterans long before the word PTSD entered public conversation. He spoke openly, sometimes painfully, about nightmares, panic, and the invisible wounds carried home from combat. He lobbied for better treatment, better understanding, better care. In doing so, he shattered the myth that heroes returned untouched.